This Tech Gear Talk is sponsored by Gizmodo. Get cash for your old tech.
What's up guys, Sagi here, and welcome to another Tech Gear Talk. Today I'm going to tell you why you should still consider getting the Canon SL2 in 2020. If you're a beginner and you're just starting out, a lot of times you immediately go for the latest and greatest cameras on the market. But let's see if we can still make a compelling case for a camera that was released 2.5 years ago. I'm gonna cover some of the reasons why I still use the SL2 even now, and then make sure that you stay till the end because the last two reasons are the ones that I think most people don't really take into consideration, and they're probably two of the most important things that you should do when you're buying a camera. To start with, the SL2 renders colors beautifully right out of the camera. This has been a Canon strength for years, and personally, I appreciate being able to grab a JPEG right out of the camera and use it without having to mess around with the colors too much. If you want to have even more control over your image, you can always shoot in RAW, and then you can really start playing around with more advanced editing. I test a lot of cameras, and I've been doing this for a while now. So I can get good results with any camera at this point, but being able to get great color and accurate skin tones right out of the gate is awesome. The SL2 also uses a 24 megapixel sensor, which we see Canon use on much more expensive models. So you're getting a higher level of performance at a lower price point. And 24 megapixels is plenty for what most people are ever going to need out of this type of camera. The next thing I want to bring up is that the SL2 is easy to use and has everything you need to learn photography and video. A lot of times people buy a first camera that can be just too advanced for them and even maybe intimidating, and at the end it can just become overwhelming. What's great about the SL2 is that it's very simple to use, and at the same time it has all the more advanced modes that you need to grow as a creator. When you get it, you can start out by shooting on full automatic mode, which Canon calls program, or P on the dial menu over here. That means that the SL2 will pick the right aperture, shutter speed, and ISO for you. And all you need to do is concentrate on framing your shot. As you start learning more about exposure, you can move to aperture priority or shutter speed priority. And if you're not familiar with these, aperture priority means that you pick the aperture, or how wide you want the opening to be in the lens. And then the camera will adjust the shutter speed to make sure that you have the right amount of light to get a proper exposure. Now, shutter speed priority is the exact opposite. You pick the shutter speed, or how long the shutter will stay open, and then the camera will pick an aperture for you. So you can see it's really easy to learn about exposure with the SL2, and you can see the results right in the LCD and play around. Once you get a better understanding of exposure, you can move on to manual mode where you can pick the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. You have full control over every element of your exposure. Now, once you know how to do that, you can pick up any camera in the world and be able to get a proper exposure. Sure, it might look different and the dials might be in a different location, but once you find aperture, shutter speed, and ISO on any camera, you're good to go. And the SL2 even has exposure compensation, which gives you more advanced options like intentionally over or underexposing your image. Just in case you need help with exposure, I'll link to a video up in the corner in the description that explains everything in more detail and hopefully help you out. For video, you can just select a frames per second option and then set your shutter speed accordingly, and you're all set. Now, in that respect, video is a little more simple than photography because you very rarely change your shutter speed. Now, speaking of video, the SL2 lets you shoot 1080p at 2430 and 60 frames per second, which are definitely the three most popular frames per second settings. If you want a softer and more cinematic look, then I suggest that you shoot at 24 frames per second. If you want the sharpest and most crisp footage you can get out of the SL2, then shoot at 60 frames per second. I like to shoot somewhere in the middle, so all of my videos are shot at 30 frames per second. In the newer version of this camera, the SL3, Canon actually removed the option for 24 frames per second, which a lot of people complained about. And I created a cinematic look tutorial for the SL2, and I'll link to it up in the corner and in the description so that you can see how you can get your footage to go from this to this. Now, before I continue, if you like what you've seen so far, let me know by giving this video a thumbs up. It helps me know what kind of content you guys like, so I can make more of it. And if it's your first time here, go ahead and hit the subscribe and notification buttons so you can stay up to date on all the latest gear and tutorials. Now back to the SL2, some people may notice that it can't shoot 4K video. But what you want to think about is whether you actually need or even want 4K footage. Like, do you have a computer that's powerful enough to edit it? Do you want to deal with larger files that require more storage? Do you want to buy faster and more expensive memory cards that can handle that higher bit rate? There's not one answer that fits everyone, so I like to bring these things up and help you make an educated decision. Now, personally, when I shoot for YouTube or just family stuff, I don't shoot in 4K. The next thing I want to talk about is this awesome, fully articulating touchscreen. This is by far my favorite design because regardless of how I use the camera, I can always get the screen to face me. So if I'm shooting from the hip, so the camera is below eye level, or if I have it close to the ground, I can just point this screen up like this. If I have the camera on a tripod, or if I'm shooting over a group of people, I gotta go the other way. I can go ahead and have it face down. When I'm on a slider or a gimbal, there are times where having the screen face the side is the best option. And this is also true if I'm shooting vertically with the camera below eye level. I can still see exactly how I have my shot framed without having to get my head all the way down to the ground. And finally, when I'm in front of the camera or vlogging, I can just flip the screen to face the front. Not everyone is gonna use their camera in all the ways that I mentioned, but I always like having the option available to me when I need it. Now, on top of the flexibility in terms of positioning, the screen is also a full touchscreen. So you can control the camera from the screen without having to use the directional pad on the back. I can do everything from control my aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. I can even enable touch shutter, which will get focus and then take a shot when I touch the screen. So that way I don't have to use the shutter at all. Now the touch functionality also extends to the main menu, and Canon's main menu system is super simple. Everything is organized into sections that make sense, and the labels are easy to understand. Now remember that I mentioned that some cameras can be really complicated and the menu system can quickly become overwhelming. Now this isn't gonna be an issue for you with the SL2. And on top of that, using the touchscreen is just super intuitive. I mean, we're using our cell phones, we're using so many touch-enabled devices that interacting in that way with the camera creates a really good user experience. Now, the last thing on the screen is the quick menu, which you can activate by clicking the Q or Set button, or by clicking the Q that's on the top right of the LCD. Now, this brings up the quick menu, which has all of the most used functions and settings. You can change focus mode, drive mode, white balance, picture style, and a lot more, and all of this without even having to go into the main menu. Okay, so it's easy to use, but what about the autofocus? No problem. When we use the LCD, we get to use Canon's super reliable dual pixel autofocus system, which is one of my favorites. You have face tracking, so whether you're shooting video or taking portraits using the LCD, the SL2 will automatically detect and track faces for you and then keep them in focus. There are also a ton of autofocus points to select from if you want to manually choose where the camera should focus. Now, if you want to use the viewfinder, you are limited to 9 autofocus points. That means that you can either let the SL2 automatically select one of the 9 points for you, or you can manually select which one you wanted to use. The 9 autofocus points in the viewfinder are a limitation of an entry-level model like the SL2. But when I need more than that, and I have the SL2 with me, I can always use the LCD and then use the dual pixel autofocus system, which, like I said, is great. Another great feature of the SL2 is that you can shoot in-body time-lapse. There's a movie mode that will allow you to shoot full HD or 1080p time-lapse right in the camera. All you need to do is enable it in the settings, and you select an interval, which is how long you want the camera to wait between each shot. Then you select the total number of shots that you want the SL2 to take, and that will dictate how long your time lapse will be. Then finally, you select whether you want the exposure to change with each shot, or you want the SL2 to keep the initial exposure for all subsequent shots. You can also decide whether you want the LCD to show you every exposure, or if you want the camera to beep with each shot. And if you do choose to turn the LCD off, you save battery life for much longer time lapses. So this is a great feature. It's so easy to use and you can get another type of shot without having to do a lot of work. Moving on, another fantastic feature about the SL2 is that you can remotely control it for both photography and video using the Canon Camera Connect app. Now, this is a feature that I use all the time for video, and it even has some applications for photography. So for video, you can pretty much change any setting. You can get your exposure just right, make sure that you're framed correctly, and then you're in focus, then start and stop your video. So it's kind of like having a remote monitor, but even better because you're not tethered to the camera. For photography, again, you can lock in your exposure and then you can trigger the camera remotely. And this is a fantastic feature for macro photography where you don't necessarily want to touch the shutter, which can create some camera shake. Once you have your images and video, you can wirelessly move both to your phone, make a quick edit or not, and then post. Now, this is such a better workflow than having to take the SD card out, move everything to your computer, and then figure out how to get it to your phone. Now, next I want to cover a couple of smaller items, and then I'll get to the two really important things that I mentioned in the beginning. The first smaller item I want to mention is that the SL2 has a center pin on the hot shoe, which was removed in the newer SL3 and even the full frame RP. Now, this means that the SL2 can easily use essentially any Canon compatible third-party flash or trigger, which give you much more cost-effective options. Now, with some of the newer models, Canon removed this pin, which requires you to buy higher cost Canon accessories. Now, you saw me remove this. I have these on all my cameras instead of the little cap that comes on here, and it's a level. So I bought like 10 of these for, I don't know, I think it was like $6, and I have them on all my cameras, and now I can easily level them whenever I'm on a tripod. And if you're interested, I'll put a link to these in the description. They're so inexpensive and they're really so useful. Now, the next item I want to talk about is the mic input, which lets us connect an external microphone to the SL2 and then get much better audio than the internal microphone. A lot of people spend the majority of their time looking at cameras and lenses, but then they completely overlook audio. This could be a big mistake because audio plays such a huge role in how the viewer perceives your content. So here I am recording on the Canon SL2's internal mic. I'm sitting about 3 feet away from the camera in a fairly well-treated room, so this should give you a pretty good idea of what you should expect if you're using the built-in microphone. And here I am using the Rode Video Mic Pro Plus. It's a shotgun microphone. It's placed directly out of frame, so it's about 18 inches away from me right here. And what I like about this setup is that I can move as far away as I want from the camera and then just bring the mic with me because it's still tethered right into the SL2. And hopefully this gives you a pretty good idea of what using an external microphone can do for your audio. I have a dedicated video where I reviewed a whole line of microphones, and I'll link to it up in the corner and in the description so you can find something that works for your budget. Okay, so now let's get to the two things that I think a lot of people forget to consider. The first is the lens system. When you're buying a camera, you think about what you need now and what you might need in the future. And one of the most important things that you should consider is the lens system. When you buy good lenses, they stay with you much longer than the camera body. Like I have Canon L series lenses. I'm using one right there. I've got a bunch more back there. I've had some of them for over 10 years and I don't plan on upgrading them anytime soon because they're still excellent. Now, during that time, I've upgraded the camera body probably like 5 or 6 times, but I'm still using the same lenses. Now, the SL2 can accept both EF and EFS mount lenses, which means that you have access to an amazing lineup of lenses. Not only do you have a lot of options, but since you can use both APS-C and full frame lenses, you can start investing in higher quality glass and then keep it as you upgrade to something like the 90D.
Speaking of upgrading, Gizmodo is a new site where you can sell your old cameras, cell phones, laptops, game consoles, and used electronics. Not only will Gizmodo give you money to help fund your new upgrade, but you won't be responsible for toxic chemicals from those old devices leaking into the land. It's super easy, just click the link in the description, hit sell your device, and find out just how much you can get for your used electronics. It doesn't matter if it's cracked, damaged, works, doesn't work, they offer free shipping, a 30-day price guarantee, and fast payments. So go ahead and support Tech Gear Talk by clicking the link in the description, checking out their website, and start selling now with Gizmodo.
Now, on top of all the great options from Canon, there are really good options from third-party vendors which give you even more affordable options. As a rule, I will pretty much always encourage you to invest in lenses rather than a body. And that brings me to the last reason I think the SL2 is still a great option: the price. Right now in the US, you can buy the SL2 for about $500 brand new. And this ties right into what we just talked about. I would rather have you buy a less expensive body and then spend the rest of your budget on lenses and accessories. In my experience, a better lens improves my images more than a better body. So if I had $1,000 to spend, I would spend half of it on the body and the other half on lenses, instead of buying the most expensive body that I can afford and then using inexpensive lenses. And I'd love to know what you think about this approach. Okay, so in my opinion, the SL2 still represents an excellent value, even in 2020. It's a great beginner camera and it will allow you to learn everything you need to know about exposure. It's easy to use, it has a great fully articulating touchscreen, the dual pixel autofocus system is fantastic, we have an external mic input for better audio, great color, remote control functionality, and an extensive lineup of EF and EFS mount lenses. I'd love to know what you think about the SL2. Do you still think it's a good beginner camera, and then why or why not? If you're looking for a much more advanced DSLR from Canon, you should definitely check out the T8i or the 90D. And I'll put links in the description to both of those. The SL2 body sells for around $500 brand new, and again, I'll put links in the description to the body, as well as the lenses and some accessories that I like because there are always specials and discounts, and those links will be automatically updated with the lowest pricing. I really hope I was able to give you a good overview of the SL2 in 2020. And if I did, it would mean a lot to me if you could let me know by giving this video a thumbs up. If you're new here, join the community by hitting the subscribe and notification buttons, and then drop me a comment so that I can welcome you. For more opportunities for live interaction, you can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Tech Gear Talk. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.
And again, I want to give a shout out to Gizmodo for making this video possible. If you guys are looking to sell your used or damaged electronics, go ahead and check out their website at www.gizmodo.com.